Dreams. My name is Troy Ritchie, and I'm a future filmmaker with enormous aspirations. Join me in receiving inspiration from some of the most influential people with big dreams of their own. Learn how to overcome negative self-talk, remain focused, and accomplish everything you've ever dreamed possible by their example. If you ever wanted to be a part of someone before they broke big, now's your chance on the Always Go Big Interview Podcast.
And we are live, and I'm so excited for our guest today, Sally Illingworth. I told you, Sally, in the prep that I was going to share my story and then enough about me. Besides, there's no viewers on right now anyways. They come on. But really, it started in 2018. So 2018, I was with a startup company, headed their sales and marketing, and we did everything we could pre-funding, right? And then when funding came around, back then I was involved in content. So I did all the content strategy, all the email marketing, who's clicking, and all that type of fun stuff. When funding came, no more generalists, they said. They needed specialists. So Troy, you zero in on what you do and that one thing, nothing else. So they stripped that from me. And I'm like, man, I'm going to see what's on LinkedIn. This is like March, right? So I'm kind of down the dumps. I go on LinkedIn, and there's this girl, on, and I call it spit and fire, with your accent, passionate, right? And you're talking truth, and you're very vulnerable. You're sharing things. I'm like, who is it? What is she doing? This is LinkedIn. The next day you're on it again. And then I think the third day you're on it, you don't have makeup on. And you're just like, hey, this is who I am. And then your hashtag, brains over breasts. I'm like, who is this girl? And you, and then the Milwaukee crew, just completely changed my identity in that I don't need an employer to create content. And I finally told the employer back in May, because they were like, why are you doing all these videos on LinkedIn? I said, hey, you took away my responsibility. You can't take away LinkedIn. So I am so glad that you're on here. And so how have things been? Well, let's start with COVID. Off script, I didn't have this question, but how are things going as far as the pandemic is for you?
Can I just say first, I'm very excited to talk about this story, because hearing about your story and how you got started and what it meant for you, seeing people like me on LinkedIn, I think what's pretty cool about that is it's actually not that different to me when I went on there, in terms of it was all new and it was scary, but then it completely transformed everything. But with COVID, it's been a difficult year, particularly from, I think, if I can be really specific, a content creation side of things, not being able to get in the room with people and having to deal with that. It's interesting. We've been on video conferencing all year, which you think would be exciting for content creators, but I'm sort of over virtual videos to the extent we've been doing them, and I wish I could be around more people, because you can never replace that human energy. So that's probably been the most difficult thing this year, and I've just tried to keep my head out of the politics of it all, because it's not fun. But how's COVID been for you on the other side of the world?
Well, I was unemployed, and then I wrote a book. And by the way, just to give you an update, the book is in Australia. I don't know where it goes from Australia to the next stop, but your book is on the way. It's in Australia. Now, I've read some articles about you. You were on the news at like 18 with a pizza place, right? Yeah. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. That feels like a lifetime ago now. I was still doing work with that brand up until sort of the middle of 2019. But how it started, the short story is that I was 15, 16 at the time, but I'd moved out of home when I was 15. I moved from Darwin, which is at the top of Australia, gone down to Sydney. I was living with my dad's business partner at the time. And I didn't have to work anymore, right? I didn't have to do house chores. We had a housemaid. We were living in a really big and expensive house. And it didn't sit well with me, because I just get handed pocket money. But my parents had raised me where if you want $20, you've got to go and vacuum and mop an entire house, and then I'll give you money. So I was very exhausted by not being able to earn my money. So me being determined, I went out and got a job, and I ended up turning a customer service job at a local pizza shop into a sort of 7.5-year career with the brand. So by the time I was 18, I ended up launching that brand in Darwin, Northern Territory, because I'd lived there before. So yeah, a scary journey, exciting journey. It feels like it happened so quick, which it kind of did, like sort of within a 2 to 3 year period. And you know, the most important part of that story is that it didn't end as planned, and that's something I've not really spoken about a lot yet. But it didn't go to plan. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about sort of going big and then sort of like starting big again. Yeah,
and so that's a great way. And everyone watching, this is the Always Go Big interview podcast. We have a special guest, Sally A. Illingworth, and the purpose of this podcast is not to receive information in the sense of expertise. It's more around hearing a personal story of someone that is about to break big or someone that has broken big. And Sally fits both, and that's why we're so excited to have her on. And the creating content. You said that you weren't wired, that wasn't part of the plan. I started creating content on LinkedIn in April of 2018. You were before me. Was it like, how did you know to even start shooting video? What was it?
Well, you know, it's interesting. So if you were April 2018, I think I'd come on in around February 2018. Okay. And there's no sort of clear-cut answer to your question, because for me, it was a matter of, you know, probably similar to you in some senses, where I was, you know, I'd sort of been in my career for however many years, and I was sort of feeling a bit flat. Like I just wanted to do something different and learn something. And I was on Instagram one day, and I didn't at the time use Instagram that much, and still don't to this day, not nearly as much as I use LinkedIn. And I was seeing all these videos come up with like, you know, 10,000 views, 20,000 views. And I'm like, what are these people doing? I'm like, what? My joke was always, don't these people have jobs? Like, how can everyone do content all day? And anyway, so I was like, this is fascinating. I wonder how you can get someone to watch a video. Like, why does this video get 200 views? Why does that video get 10,000 views? And so I became fascinated in trying to understand how video ignites emotion in us as people. And therefore that translates into content performance and content success for the creator. And so much like you, I sort of just picked LinkedIn because for me, it felt safe to go onto LinkedIn because my family weren't there. No, I didn't know people. So I thought, okay, I'm going to LinkedIn. I'm going to start creating videos and I'm just going to test stuff. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. So I started talking, like in the early days, I was doing like book reviews, sharing the book I read, and I love this book. Great, and I learned this mental model from this blog. So it was highly personal, and then it sort of just transformed into something bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And when did the idea? I know. So I'm not a woman, as you can tell, and so I know that you guys go through a lot more than we go through with inappropriateness or whatnot. When was the video you did without makeup? Was just fire. I mean, just and I'll say spit and fire. It's one of my things. It's passionately sharing. Was that an idea, or was that a screw it? I'm just gonna tell the truth, and I don't care. Like, what was the process behind that authenticity opinion being so authentic?
Well, I think, you know, it certainly was hard, right? And you probably have experienced this a bit. I think a lot of people have, particularly people who came onto LinkedIn video back in 2018, 2019 even, because from what I understand, LinkedIn didn't release the video feature until around the end of 2017. So it's quite new. And I mean, when I started LinkedIn video, I had no consciousness that you were supposed to be a professional in a suit, sitting on LinkedIn with a plain wall and have a script. Like, I had no idea that was the expectation from people. So I copped a lot of criticism. But, you know, what ended up happening was, for me, like, I find it very difficult not to be sort of just authentic. And so if that means I'm in the moment, I think of something, I want to record a video with no makeup on, I do it. Awesome. Of course, it's scary, especially, mind you, as a woman. You know, women tend to be quite aware of what they look like, and, you know, we're known to wear makeup. So it's still scary, but for me, it was like, sort of, screw it, what have I got to lose? I just put the video out there. And I've just got to do that, because why would I hide from that? Why would I hide from my truth when it should be about what value I'm delivering in the video for the people who want to hear it? And unfortunately, you know, online it's not always a nice environment, and people are always going to criticize you. And I think that's something I managed to really acquaint with early on. It doesn't mean it's easy when you get criticized online, but I learned to acquaint with the fact that, like you can't please everyone. And people say that all the time, but I think until you're in a position where you feel like you're really learning that, it can be hard to sort of have the courage to just go out there, even offline as well.
Sure. Yeah. So just to clarify, the idea came because I'm with you. I'll forget it if I don't do it right then and there. Sometimes in my car or whatever. So what you're saying is that in the example of the video with no makeup, the importance and the purpose is on what you can share that others can hear. With or without makeup, I need to get this out there. Am I understanding that right? Is that's the driving force, is getting it out there for others?
Yeah, because I'm probably much like you, where, when you have that whether you want to call it a light bulb moment, that burst of energy, you learn something. It's like, you got to get it out because, I can plan this, I can go and write a script structure for myself. But if I do the video in 3 days' time, it's not going to be delivered with the same amount of energy as I just came up with that thought with. It's different if you're planning a marketing campaign, right? Like very, very different. But when it comes to being a content creator and using your personal brand, your existing knowledge, your passion, etc., to build out your personal brand, tell your story, show what you're all about, you sort of have to take advantage of those moments. And it's not easy. And I don't know what it's like from a male perspective. Maybe you have perspective on that, like the equivalent of being a woman who usually wears makeup, putting on a video where she's not wearing makeup. I don't know what the male equivalent is to that, but it's scary.
It may not be one. And what I want to get out of that, and I hope the audience, the thousands of viewers that will be watching later, because they're not watching now, is that your purpose was not about anything other than the content. And that's what I try to tell people all the time. There's no excuse about, I don't have the equipment, I don't have this, I don't have that. In fact, if you had strategically thought, on Tuesday, I'm going to do a video without makeup to really show them that now it's an agenda more than like, Troy, I just had to say something and I just said it. That to me is so great. So I want to follow up with these. Go ahead.
If I look back at a video now where I've got no makeup on and I look at it, it doesn't matter how well it might perform, how effective it was, how impactful, I still sit there as, with the insecurities I naturally have as a person and go, oh my God, I've got so many blemishes on my skin, oh no, my complexion's not consistent, right? So you're always going to have that. But to your point, it's about getting the value out that you want to get out when you want to get it out.
Yeah, it is. And so here's a two-part question. One, so you start doing video, you said it yourself, you want to test it out, right? And yes, I'm with Nick. There is no male equivalent. What you guys have to go through is a tremendous accomplishment. And I don't want to say everything we say nowadays can be taken the wrong way. You're not a hero. That's all that matters. So you started doing video. You wanted to test it out, right? Instagram is crowded. Facebook is crowded. LinkedIn, not so crowded. It's new market, right? So you start doing this. Which video was it that you said, wow, I'm onto something, where you had that boom moment? Do you remember?
Well, it's interesting. That's sort of a two-part answer, actually, for me. So the video was one where I put up a video, because to your point, as you noticed with me, particularly in the early days, like I'd be in the car, I'd be whatever. I mean, I've barely been in the car for the last 6 months, so there haven't been any recent car videos. But, I'd recorded a video in my car, and it would have been in around, maybe March 2018. Or beginning of March. And I recorded a video in my car anyway. And at the time, some colleagues I was working with, there was just sort of a whole bunch of stuff going on, standard corporate, right? And just, people, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And it was just really, really bad culture, toxic culture. Anyway, I won't go into the details. So I had this, I'd always had this belief that, don't let a job description confine what you believe your potential is. I'm not saying you go and do everyone else's job and fall outside of your scope, but don't let it limit your mindset in terms of what's possible, because I was in this work environment and a lot of people have experienced this where, everyone was sort of they're resorting to go, oh, that's not my job, because the work culture is so poor. And so I was really frustrated. So I was in the car and I pulled out my phone, and I think it was probably about 6:30 p.m. in Sydney. And, I had a big sort of black baggy jumper on, and sort of I'm known for wearing baggy jumpers around the house, whatever. And I think, and I was in the car and I recorded this video. And when I put it out, I made the caption, I don't want to offend any HR managers or whatever, but I just recorded this quick video talking about how, go beyond the call of duty. Like, don't let a job description define you. I understand their role in a business and they're there to serve a purpose. But for you as an individual, don't let it limit what you think you're capable of doing. Anyway, that got like 124,000 views in the first 48 hours, and I freaked out.
Wow.
I freaked out. Part of it was because I was wearing a big baggy jumper. Part of it was because apparently I was in my car. Part of it was because people were saying, oh, there's a coffee cup in her car. How dirty is she? I don't know what it was, but it just went bonkers. And I remember sitting there with my partner at the time and one of our friends, and I'm looking at this video going, do I delete this thing? Like, people are happy. And then I'm like, but to answer your question, it was in that moment that I was like, wow, this is what I've been trying to figure out with video. What triggers people to go either way with a video, and then the power of the people come together.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. I was like, controversy, really effective. Really effective.
But again, it wasn't the purpose of controversy. That's what I love about it. The result may be controversial, right? But it's these talk heads that want to sit around a corporate table and generate controversy. That's where it's like, okay, you're missing your point. The purpose is you just want to share for that. That is a phenomenal. So is there any, I have not hit that mark quite yet. And people like Shay Rowbottom will say they miss the the boom moment, right? Where they can be more intimate with at that moment when you're like, okay, 124,000 views, obviously it goes up and down, but you have now arrived. Is there any sense of responsibility where you kind of feel like, I got to protect my brand, I can't say that? Or is it still Sally is always the Sally Ben?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, like just to sort of add there and sort of speak to what Shay mentioned as well. Like, there certainly was that pre-boom period. So, it was quite an anomaly to achieve those sorts of figures back then, but even more so now. I know there was one video I released talking about brains over breast, and I'm concerned about the younger female generation and the pressures they probably feel thanks to the likes of Instagram. And that video got about 350,000 views in the first 48 hours, and I was like, wow. So, but to answer your question, just in relation to, now I've just forgotten your question because I'm going down a different route. What was your question again?
It was around, like, was there any added pressure for not talking about things because they might have an effect that would impact your views? Certainly there's a feeling of pressure, and even now, and I don't do nearly as much video content as I used to do, and that's just for all sorts of reasons with managing commitments. But there is a sense of responsibility, because not so much in the beginning, but especially over time. I started to realize, even middle of 2018, there were people across the world, including people like yourself, but, people going out there, I'm creating a video because I saw Sally do it and I know I can do it as well. And so there was a very early sense of, wow, people are listening and I'm having an indirect impact on people that I'm not intending to have, but I'm influencing them in a way where I'm empowering them. And so I became very conscious of that. And then over time, certainly, I think you realize that it's easy for us to commoditize the thought of having followers. We go, because for a lot of people, it becomes a game, right? And that's not a bad thing, because they're just trying to just work it and just manage it. But I think what I've always tried to do is anchor myself to, whether I've got 10,000 followers, 2,000 followers, 100,000 followers, what's important to me is that I acknowledge that those followers are actually people. Yeah, you might have a few bots on LinkedIn and whatever that just sort of make their way. But as long as you can anchor yourself back to the fact that your followers are people, and therefore you have an indirect responsibility to be true to yourself, then I think you're okay. But as soon as you forget that that's people behind the screen, because we're in a digital environment and it's easy to commoditize it, that's when I think, you find yourself in a sticky position. So I've not been more cautious of what I say or sharing my beliefs, but I am certainly more mindful with everything that I do that, it's likely that one video will likely at least actually influence one person to think differently. So I need to be really conscious of that. So it sort of has changed in a sense, but I certainly don't hold back at all. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And then the next question is related to overcoming negative thoughts. We all have them, imposter syndrome. A lot of times, the excuse that I'll hear from folks when I encourage them to do video, and I don't, LinkedIn it feels like LinkedIn is salting video views, organic video views, maybe to raise opportunities for ads, whatnot. But everyone has talked about it, the restriction of views. However, they're still, whoever that deep following you have, they're still. So I do believe video is still important.
Yeah.
It's hard to hide on video.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard to hide. So when you think about like someone that says, well, I'm not Troy or I'm not Sally, they have the it factor, the gift or whatever. For you especially, yes, you do have that. But share with us how you still probably had to overcome negative thoughts to actually press record, right?
Yeah, I still do now. It's interesting to like even when we're going live today, or I do a live by myself, or I do a live with someone else, I still can't tell people, and a lot of people don't believe me. Like if I'm going live stream, I get all these butterflies in my stomach. I'm half excited. I'm half nervous. Oh my God, what am I going to say? Like I can't, what if I say the wrong thing? I still have those feelings. And, and I do a lot of video work professionally for a living, right? But I still have those fears. So I think what's important for people is, just try and really ground yourself to the fact that like you're a human, and it's natural to feel those feelings. And, a big one, and you've probably spoken about this before yourself and with other people, you probably have the same thing. One of the biggest things when it comes to starting with content as an individual, so you don't have a company funding it, you don't have a big company marketing plan and, all these structures and processes as to how you're going to deliver great videos. When you start by yourself and you want to use a platform like LinkedIn or any other platform for that matter, one of the biggest negative thoughts for people to overcome is, what do I have to add? Because Troy's on there and Troy's talking about being an entrepreneur and overcoming the journey. So if I've had that experience, well, I can't talk about it because Troy's talking about it. If I want to talk about, creating video content, I can't talk about that because Shay Rowbottom's talking about that. So we get this feeling of imposter syndrome because we compare ourselves to your point to other people. But what's important is you remember most people start from the same place with where you're at. And there's a saying someone once said to me in an interview, which was start where you're at. That's the best thing you can do. You're going to have feelings of imposter syndrome. You're going to have feelings of, oh, crap, should I put that video out because people are responding negatively? Should I said that? An interesting one without rambling is that I was delivering an event once in Sydney, pre-COVID, obviously, and this woman in the crowd, she'd sort of, it was around LinkedIn content creation. She had said, she put her hand up. She said, well, yeah, I get it. Put content out there, just sort of, talk about things I know, talk about experiences, even if I'm indirect. And that's the best place to start. Don't feel like you have to go and read 20 books to start creating content. Start with where you're at. Anyway, and she asked this question. She said, yeah, I get that. But she said, but what if I put a video out today on a topic and then I change my mind in 6 months' time? How do I get rid of that? Because people would have seen it. How do I go back and tell those people that watched it 6 months ago that I've changed my mind on that topic? I said, look, I don't really have a specific answer for you, but my belief is that, most people are leaders in some capacity. I don't care if you don't have a leadership title at a business. You're a leader in your own life and you're a leader for the people around you. And so what's important to note there is that an important characteristic of leaders is that they're willing to learn and change their mind and do things differently in the future. So for anyone else who has that fear that, well, I might change my mind, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Because that's life. We'll change our mind. There's things I thought that to do when I was 14 years old, and I look back now and go, that was not good. Yeah.
In fact, it's a great second video. You know what I mean? It's like another video. Well, 6 months ago, I said this on video, and now I've completely changed my. That is so true. Now, when you think about like what you do, you're very entrepreneurial. You're involved in a lot of things. How has video helped? Is like I know it's not purpose, but like results wise, has it gotten you business? Like, have you got business based on just sharing video? Because you do not sell in your video. No. It's all free content to help others improve. So has there been a return?
Yeah, there has. And, So like when I started doing videos on LinkedIn, as I mentioned, my goal was not commercial. I was interested in human behavior and why are people watching videos, because as my mum would say, don't you have something to do? So I started doing these videos, and within by the middle of 2018, I had some pretty decent companies, some marketing executives from big companies reaching out to me saying, hey, like, can you come and talk to us about LinkedIn video? And I'm sitting there going, I'm not a video expert. I don't know anything about video. And so I was really honest with them, right? I'm thinking, guys, I'm from the hospitality industry. I do project management, run businesses, whatever. You know, I'm operations. I'm not a marketing girl. Like, I did a lot of personal branding and such in the early days when I opened up my pizza business, but then I'm all ops. Anyway, and so I'd sit down with them and I started talking to these companies because I thought, you know what, well, I want to hear what they're looking for help with, because they, for some reason, think I can help. And in my head, I've got no idea because I haven't figured out the psychology of this. And I'm very detailed, mind you. And so I started talking to them and I was honest with them, you know, throughout that early phase. I'd be like, well, I actually don't know. Just so you know, I'm trying to figure out what works. But when I figure it out, I will come and tell you that I've figured it out, because I wanted to figure out how to replicate what I was doing in a way that any business could apply, right? Because not everyone, and at that time, you know, peroxide hair and stuff, not everyone's got that, right? No, people aren't me. So I can't just take what's working for me and assume it's going to work for other people. I need to take what's working for me, reverse engineer it, and then figure out how you can apply, whether it's the timing of posting, et cetera, and that will work. So I certainly started getting a return pretty quickly, but I didn't run with it as much as I could have. I started getting invited to do, you know, keynotes and stuff like that and deliver workshops. So I took that on very quickly, because for me, it was also a really good way to learn more about why I was on LinkedIn. And because what would happen is, at an event that I'd speak at or in a workshop that I'd deliver for a client, what would happen is when people are asking me questions, I was taking note, like, okay, these are the questions people have. So then I could just constantly build out on the back end that this is what people need help with. So I need to equip myself with that toolkit if I want to sell that service. So I suppose the short story is there's certainly been a return, and there's been an opportunity for a return from the beginning. I think largely, you know, one thing that's been really powerful, and I always talk to people about this, is that, you know, just because, you know, you might not put out content on LinkedIn that's, you know, what I refer to as direct response campaigns, where it's like, oh, watch this video and then, you know, go to my website and buy this product, direct response. A lot of people don't do that sort of content on LinkedIn, but never underestimate the power of just building out your brand and the long-term value that delivers to you. Can't tell you how many people that sort of have become a client, and what's happened is they're never online engaging. They sit there and they'll tell me point blank, oh, we've been watching you for 7 months and we now know that you know what you're talking about. So now we want to do business with you. And I go, okay, great, right? So don't be discouraged by lack of direct response, and just know that, you know, manage your time, manage your resources, be smart about it, depending on what your circumstance is. Like, for example, if you've got to run a business and work 40 hours a week, don't start allocating 20 hours of those weeks to LinkedIn content if it's not going to pay the bills. So just be smart about it. But yes, there's a return. And, you know, now, like, sort of fast forward to 2020 and almost 2021 now, can't believe it. The year's been taken from us, hasn't it?
Good. Get it out. Get rid of it.
But now I'm in a position, you know, that, you know, with some partners of mine, like, you know, we're working and have been since the beginning of this year on building our campaign services solution for technology brands, which is what our mission is to build, you know, hosted predominantly on YouTube, a technology TV show, because I'm very passionate about technology. So, you know, but that wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't done all the pre-work and worked hard in pre-season prior to that. That would not be possible. So yes, there's returns. It's just about you getting creative and resourceful. And if you are in a position, I would say, from, you know, particularly a business perspective, where you do need more immediate returns to justify it as a business, then I would recommend making sure that you're very clear on what those returns look like, because unfortunately a lot of people just dive straight into the content. They don't know what they're measuring, don't know what they're doing. And then that's difficult, right, to make sure that it's commercially viable for you, especially if you are investing money into video production, et cetera.
Yes. And that's where I go into the purpose result speech. My kids, I have 4 kids, 2 daughters and 2 sons. And I always talk about purpose and result. If your purpose is to generate revenue through content, don't do it, because it'll get heavy. It'll feel like a burden. If your purpose is to share so others can improve in their day-to-day, the result is going to be, gaining followers, generating revenue. But the purpose, we can see through that as the audience. If you come out and your purpose is to make money, even though you don't say it, we can feel that. That energy transfer is like, oh, this guy feels like a used car salesman or whatnot.
Can I add something there to your point? Like, just to sort of add on to what you're saying, I 100% agree. And I think, like, we live in a world now where it doesn't make sense that for us to expect that every piece of content is going to return money. You can go on and sell hard, right? Just look at what's happening with content globally. How much information do we consume? People are overwhelmed. But from a personal branding perspective, which is something I'm really passionate about, but for individuals in particular who are working to build their personal brand, just know, you don't have to be on there selling hard. At the end of the day, there's sort of a statement that I've used forever now, which is your personal brand is your greatest asset, because no employer can fire it, no competitor can replicate it, and no bank can repossess it, right? So it doesn't matter what happens in your life or in your businesses or in your career, no one can take it away. So to your point, Troy, if you go on, you want to deliver incredible value, more than people expect. And if you're delivering value focused on things that you know well and you can add value with, people will indirectly want to engage you and lean on your expertise and work with you on the basis that the whole point of the content is to add value with what you know. So to your point, Troy, they will see, just much like they'll see through someone who's on there only to sell, even though they're not saying it. If you're just there to deliver value, they'll see that. They'll see you're passionate about what you're talking about. They'll see that you know your stuff. And so that just opens up so many opportunities for you.
Yeah. I'm just checking here on see if there's any comments that have come in. Again, this is Always Go Big podcast where we're talking to A. Illingworth and her hearing about what she's been gone through and what she's doing. No questions here. So we're about ready to wrap up. And so a lot of times I want to ask, someone may be watching this video later or now, and they're like, wow, this girl is amazing. How do I get in touch with her? Who is the type of person that you best work with in a professional setting, and even in the coaching setting, where let's say they want to just start producing content? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you? What do you look for in working with? Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. Big question. So certainly, like, if anyone wants an email, and I hope Troy doesn't mind me sharing this, but team@elegantlyblatant.com is the easiest way, but more broadly, always on LinkedIn. I always tell people you can catch me in the comments. But certainly, my biggest passion, particularly that I've really started to live out over the last sort of 18 months, is around communication. So not just marketing, but thinking about communications more broadly. And, particularly in today's digitally noisy world, a lot of businesses struggle with that. So that's more sort of on the business side of things, if you like, enterprise side of things. But with coaching, like the types of people I really like working with are the ones who are willing to learn and the ones who are willing to not get it right straight away. I think we live in a world where it's easy for us to have a really low level of patience. We can get food delivered via Uber Eats in 20 minutes. We can order something online and it gets delivered in 24 hours. So those sorts of expectations, with just mundane things, translate over nowadays very much into sometimes people's expectations of success and growth and progress and achievement. So for me, a big thing always, no matter what side of the market I'm working on or what the situation is, working with people. I was on the phone just yesterday for a project we're kicking off, and the client says, we understand this is going to take about 6 to 12 months to have any sort of real result. That's what I look for, right? Is people who are honest, because if you and Troy, it'd be the same if you're coaching to someone, right? And someone comes to you and they go, Troy, I want you to coach me. And you go, yeah. And then you go, okay, look, it's a journey, right? It's going to take some time. I'm not saying it's going to take 20 years, but it'll take maybe 3 months to see some real results. And they say, but I want it now, because Sally's got those results, and Shay's got those results, because they're difficult to work with people like that. So I think, certainly for me, working with people who are considerate to realities and willing to work together to drive long-term results, and not thinking that, these overnight success stories are something that are common and also something that are going to be fulfilling, because usually what people find is that, that the longer and harder something is, I'm not saying that's what I sell, but the longer and harder something is, talking about entrepreneurial journeys, the more you actually look back and reflect, you develop as a person, so that's sort of the long roundabout way of people I like to work with.
I love that. Yeah. So get a hold of Sally, LinkedIn, or give that email again.
Yeah, team. I'll drop it in the comments later because I'm going to be sharing
Okay.
this live stream across my LinkedIn. But yeah, team@elegantlyblatant.com is the best way. And come on over to LinkedIn as always. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Now, I will say, I just released a book, and there was nothing special about it. It was a daily podcast called the 4 a.m. Daily Wake Up. It's micro, so it's 2 to 3 minutes. And what I did was I went to Otter dot something, and transcribed the audio into text.
Yeah.
Every one of you content creators on LinkedIn have a book in you. And Seth Godin's writing style is unique in the fact he'll write it's almost like a bunch of blogs, a collection of blogs, right? The lady that wrote You're a Badass, same structure where from start to have you with all of you have thousands. Have you thought of writing a book?
Yeah, it's a great question. Interestingly, around the end of 2018, and I can't remember the name of the sort of parent company, but anyway, there were some guys overseas, not in Australia. I'm all the way over in almighty Australia. Have you heard of Michaela Alexis? She was quite big on LinkedIn, early days of video content creation. And anyway, so there were these guys, and I know these guys, and they were producing a series of books called Think Video. And what they were doing is in different key markets, they were getting someone who was big on LinkedIn, this was their goal, to co-author the book and adjust it to that market. So I suppose the short story there is even, 6 months in, I'd been asked to sort of co-author a book with people around video on LinkedIn. Because of some personal things I had going on at the time, I just did not have the emotional bandwidth to do it and deliver on that. But yes, I've thought about writing a book. I think that the thing for me is I'm like, what do I write about? Because, and I actually love the approach you've taken that you're referring to in terms of probably making it a more modern and digestible book. Like maybe that's where you go, I can't wait to read your book, by the way. I know you said it's in Australia, so I'm just waiting for it to get dropped off at my door. And I bet it'll be just my luck it comes today.
I bet it does.
But yeah, I've thought about writing a book, and I think this, like I always joke, there's so many good stories. So I'd love to, but maybe reading your book will give me the nudge and the inspiration to sort of get off my laurels and go and do it.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing about it, because you've already written the content, if you were to take all of your content all across your channels, the most difficult is the puzzle. It's a puzzle, right? And so to maybe have, like, my sections are self-mastery, leadership, audience engagement, and personal branding. And within then, I took my content pieces that were in that kind of theme and just grouped it together. So some of the section topics are this very short read. Some are a couple of pages, but it's just, all of you guys that have inspired me. It's your book's already written because you have all of this content out there. So I would just encourage that. And then the last question that we have, this is Always Go Big interview podcast. Like I told you in prep, people will message me, especially this one. Hey, how can I be a guest on your podcast? I always answer with, well, what's your big dream? And that curveball, because they're coming in with the mindset of being an expert, teaching about their expertise. When you think about who you are and the drive that you have, you can do whatever it is you want. What is your big dream? What is it that you see moving forward? My crazy dream is I want to be a filmmaker. I'm sorry. I'm going to be a faith-based filmmaker. There's no question in my mind. What is it for you that when you think about that future?
Yeah, it's such a big question, right? It's always been hard, and I've always struggled to really pinpoint, like a big driver for me always. So whether you want to call it a dream or it's just a sort of fundamental sort of motivator for me, is it's always been about like impacting other people's lives in a good way. And like I do a lot of mentorship and stuff because I like when someone goes, that really helps me. Like it's a big motivator for me. So I'd certainly say an overarching theme is how many people I can reach, how many people I can impact. And that's where things like video and content really come into play because you can do it at scale. But I'd certainly say like a big dream of mine has become, and at this stage, it's looking like it's going to be through the Reboot Show, which is the technology TV show I'm building up with my partners. But my big dream is to really just unlock as many big conversations as possible. And that sort of anchors back to my passion around communications, not just marketing, because, I've certainly been in so many situations in my life, personally and professionally, and like many people. And, when I really think about those situations and what went wrong in a lot of cases, human nature comes back to communication. So a big thing for me is, encouraging other people to communicate better, open up dialogue, discuss things, talk through things, and helping other people to communicate better. So my big dream is being able to help as many people and businesses as I can to learn how to better communicate, whether it's to their employees or, or their co-worker or their customers. Massive dream of mine to do that, as to help as many people as I can with that. Yeah.
And sounds so needed right now. Do you watch the show Cobra Kai on Netflix?
No. What is that?
Are you familiar with Karate Kid, the movie Karate Kid? You guys, so
yes, I haven't. Yeah.
Okay. So Karate Kid was in 85, 86 maybe. And now it's years later, and the guy that was being bullied is now the successful one. And the bully is now the hard on his, his life has gone bad. Right. So the role has completely shifted. And as you're watching this, and if you decide to make sure Karate Kid first, but as you're watching this, you're screaming at the television as the viewer, that because we both like each other. They won't admit it to themselves. They won't admit it to loved ones, but you can see their mannerisms, and the directors do a great job. And they're like talking like this, where they're just missing each other. And if they only would sit down, or you watch movies about, you see the husband's view and the wife's view, and you're like, they love each other, yet they go through the divorce because they keep missing each other. And I think that's what's wrong with our society here in the States, is that we all just were like missing that. So your dream is in alignment with really helping, I think, a lot of people with their mental health challenges and so forth. Sally, we could go on forever and ever, but I'm going to be respectful of your time and the viewers' time. Thank you so much for being a guest. Remember, in business and in life, never go small, always big. Thank you so much, Sally.
Thanks for having me, Troy.
Bye.